Welcome to 4.0 to Pro, the pickleball podcast that focuses on a single shot, tip, or strategy to improve your pickleball game with every single pocket-sized episode. Our goal is to make you better on the court every time you hear our voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 4.0 to Pro, your pocket-sized pickleball podcast, where we teach you a single shot or strategy every single episode. I am Michael O'Neill here in dark Long Beach, California. I'm joined by one Mircea Morariu there in Boca Raton, Florida. After so much time, sir, how are you?
I am doing very well, and it's really good to be back on with you. We have been very negligent in our pickleball podcast duties, I must admit, and life has just gotten in the way, but there are just sometimes some more important things you got to take care of, and it just is what it is. It is also dark here, but I did get a chance to play a little pickleball today at my good friend JB's court, which is in the back of his house. And if you all are out there and loving pickleball, I highly recommend having a pickleball court in the back of your home. That is a lot of fun to play at and enjoy.
I agree wholeheartedly. I have been so under-pickled. You and I have missed each other for a number of different reasons, but I haven't played a ton. I'm going to play tomorrow morning, which I'm very excited about with my kind of regular crew. A bit of who you've met already. Really interesting, too, when you take so much time off. I would say it's not quite as bad as golf, because when I was into golf for a while, if I took like 3 days off of golf, it was like I was starting over again. It was crazy how regular and consistent you have to be. But with pickleball, and this is a topic for another show, but coming back after a long time off, like if you have an injury or in our case, we've been kind of pulled by real life stuff. It's pretty interesting because your brain thinks you should be able to make all of the shots that you're attempting, yes, but your body doesn't let you do that. And it's a real battle of frustration versus ego, I think.
Oh, 100%. And whenever you take some time off, you have to give yourself a little bit grace because you're not going to be just as sharp and everything's a little bit off. And when you're playing at the higher level, when things are 5% off, it makes a huge difference. So yes, I definitely feel you. And it took me time to get a little bit back in the groove, but it feels good to get back out there and hope everyone is enjoying some pickleball out there. I was really fortunate to drill with one of our camp members. I want to give him a shout out, Jason, who came down from Canada. And we had a good 5-hour session split between 2 days and really enjoyed it, really soaked up a lot of stuff and felt that he really got better and piggybacked a lot of the concepts that we worked on in the camp. And we are working on a new site and a new camp over the next couple months. So we hope to lay that out there soon.
I mean, the live camp thing is definitely my favorite part of doing this show. And I also love that it's when you're at a certain level. I mean, certainly 3.5 and above, a lot of times the skills kind of exist, but they don't know they exist. Like if somebody came from a different sport, for instance, and you're trying to explain some sort of movement to them, they're like, I don't get it. And then you're like, what did you play before? They were like, oh, I played basketball. Oh, it's like this. And they go, oh, and then they just get it. And that's a really cool thing to see when people start being able to apply the transfer of skills from other sports or other hobbies into pickleball. It's pretty rad.
Ooh, and I mentioned this before when I discussed about this guy I trained with in Aspen. It was just a one-time lesson. And when we were about a quarter of the way through the lesson, he had been playing for several years, had a lot of lessons, and to be frank, he just had horrible footwork and just, it was right in front of me as I'm watching it. And I asked him what kind of sports he played when he was growing up. He's like, I played football. I was like, well, what position did you play? He's a linebacker. I was like, aha, what was your stance as a linebacker? He's like, well, it was like this, wide base, forward posture, you know, hips flexed, knees flexed. I was like, well, that's how you want to be when thinking. So now I often use it. So it's helped me with coaching because I can say, have you ever seen football? How does a linebacker stand? They stand like this. They don't stand straight up. They don't have their narrow base. That's the only way they can explode to the hole to get the running back is when they have that wide base. So anyway, it was just an interesting that I learned.
Yeah, we don't have this yet, but I think it would be really interesting to be able to figure out a way to do a show to teach people proper footwork without the visual, because it's it's like, or maybe we just have to do the YouTube video of it.
I think we need to do the YouTube version of it and work on the video.
Yeah.
Because it really is just, it's so fundamental. And I harp on it over and over again. And I do it when I train people. And it's just amazing to me how the lack of a footwork foundation translates into such poor play. It's just such an important part because you cannot have successful shot making with your paddle and arm technique, no matter how good it is, if you have poor footwork. You just cannot do one without the other. You have to have step A, which is the footwork, before you go to step B.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that when you're watching somebody like on a rec court, for instance, or someone that's maybe on the earlier side of the duper ladder, typically, man, maybe up until 4 or 5 and above, you and I can look at that court and go, if they just fixed their footwork, they would all leap a full point or a point and a half. It's the lowest hanging fruit and one of the more challenging things to integrate, I think.
Absolutely. So while we're on this topic in terms of analyzing footwork and things like that, I want to bring up the most frequent question that I've had most recently is about intentional play. What does that mean? I want to ask you, what does intentional rec play mean to you, and how do you implement that in your practice strategy or games?
Well, I appreciate you putting your host hat on for a moment there, Mircea. I was about to set you up for this very same question. If we listen to any of these podcasts that we put out in the world and we have something we'd like to work on, very often we don't just get to choose how great the players are that we play with unless we're in a regular group. But very often, and a core part of pickleball is the recreational play where you end up on court with 1, 2, or 3 strangers and you've got to play within those parameters. The problem is, and this is something that I think we should start by discussing. A typical racquetball court, Mircea, is 40 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 20 feet high. So width-wise, we're pretty close to pickleball court width, a little narrower by a couple feet. And then between the service area and the back of the court, you could probably put yourself in the transition zone. That would be about the size of where you're generally hitting from playing racquetball. And stay with me here. This is why I'm bringing it up. In racquetball doubles, there's 4 people crammed into that space. So imagine both transition zones on one court, but it's 2 feet narrower. And you've got 4 people with regular rackets, not quite as long as a tennis racket, but, you know, certainly longer than a paddle, hitting a rubber ball that goes at least 120 miles an hour. And so you've got the racket itself, you've got the ball going crazy all over the walls, and you've got 4 humans that have to occupy this very tight space. The part that was really, really scary, because what happens is there's a dance. When you get with 3 other people that are your level, there's a dance, because to get to a ball that's going to be on the opposite side of where that person is hitting, you've got to be right in front of them, and you've got to jump as they're hitting the ball. So they're essentially hitting the ball under your feet at the same time. It's the only way to be able to get left or right. So you've got 4 people that are weaving around in this little court, and to be safe, there's expectations on what kind of shot and what kind of hit someone's going to do. If you end up on court with someone who's like a beginner and you've got a higher level play, it can literally be dangerous. You can get a racket to the face. You know, there's a lot of bad things that can happen. Yeah. So there's a level of expectation of the type of shot and where a shot is going to go for a higher level player. And this translates into pickleball. When you get on court with a number of players, there's an expectation of the flow of the point. And the part that can be very challenging when you are a 4-5 plus that's playing with 3-0s or 3-5s is that the shots can be anywhere and anything. Things that you would never expect could come at you, and it can mentally take you out of this idea of like, oh, I really want to work on this particular shot or this particular backhand dink. You get on court with 3-5 players, you might not see a dink rally the whole time. So I'm curious how you quantify that in your own brain.
You know, very good segue into discussing, like, for example, the play that you and I played together, that the people we played with, they're generally more, let's just say, let's classify them as quote bangers. So there's not a lot of dinking going on. So you obviously have to play to your audience, so to speak. So if you are in a group where there's not a lot of dinking going on, you have to pick and choose about what you want to do. You can try to work on, let me back up a second. With every time that you step onto a court, if you are trying to get better, there should be a purpose to your play. And that is what intentional rec play is. If that's what you want to do. If you want to go out and screw around and just have fun, that's one thing. If you want to go out and get better, think of a concept, and even if there is complete chaos and you're playing with people that just whack the crap out of every ball, there are things that you can glean from that, because sometimes when you play tournaments, there are people like that. So you can pick a strategy of how to work against that, or pick a skill that you want to work on. That particular style of play that you are experiencing lends itself to. So I'm going to use the example of when you and I played with the guy and the lady that we played with. Very tennis-like in terms of their skill, whack the ball or kind of bangers. And so what I chose to work on is the offense-defense. So there wasn't going to be a lot of dinking, so I was expecting a speed up on every ball. So I was working on my defense. Whenever the ball was on the other side of the net, I worked on my defense. So I knew that something was coming. And it's very helpful, because that way we talk about this, like you always want to expect something fast, because if something is fast, you can react to it. Whereas if something comes slow, you can react to it more easily. That's one thing to think conceptually, but it's another to actually put into practice. And that's one of the things I worked on. The other thing I worked on is basically, if I got some sort of soft ball, is to work on speeding it up, because I knew that was the pace of the game. The other thing that I kept in mind was, and I was trying to express this to my partner, was let's not give them the shot that they want. Your opponent has, or at least one of them, you want to identify what's the most dangerous shot on the other side. Okay, let's say it's Joe's forehand. Let's not give Joe a fluffy forehand, dink, or fifth shot, or whatever shot it might be. But let's not give him that fluffy forehand. Let's see how he does when we target every ball to his backhand or to the other opponent. Let's see what happens. Pick a strategy, pick a hypothesis, try to work on that, implement that as much as you can, and see what happens, and then analyze that.
I really like that idea, especially if you know your partner. Like, let's say you came into rec with a person you play doubles with, every once in a while. I love the idea of being like, today I want to work on left side, or today I want to work on right side, or today I want to work on blank. Can you set me up for this? Or like, it's really helpful when that's the case and you can communicate that. I like the idea of being able to communicate with, maybe not as much with like random rec play when you're just putting a paddle up and going into a game. That's going to be harder. And I feel like that's something you probably have to do on your own. It'd be weird to be like, yeah, I'm working on my, right side counter, if you can hit me some wide dinks or whatever. But generally, I think that the game will dictate what you are able to work on. And hopefully you can, like tomorrow, I already know what I'm going to work on with that same group. I'm going to experiment with some serves tomorrow. And it could cost plenty of games, but we're not getting paid any money for this. I'm going to try it.
Enjoy it.
We're going to just see how it goes. Like I'll let my partner know, hey, guess what? We're probably going to lose a few points on serve. Just FYI, I'm going to work on some stuff.
There is something you can learn from almost every point if you want to choose to pay attention to it. And I'll give you some examples. Sometimes I learn from what people are doing on the opposite side that is not great, no matter what the skill level is. So I've been training with a guy regularly, and we've been playing at Patch Reef, and we start to drill in the morning around 7:30. And he's about a 3.5, a little bit plus. And so we start training and we drill a little bit, and then the open play comes in because you can't reserve a court anymore. So then we start playing some rec games, and we will play other players that are just kind of random people that are just, out there for some fun. And like, for example, he will hit a return and the opponent will try to drill a ball. I will be on the left, he'll be on the right. One of the opponents who's on the left, he'll try to drill a ball at me to my backhand, and I just let it go. And I'll say,
Okay.
so that's an example of what you don't want to do. You can analyze what your opponents are doing when they hit either a terrible shot or have a poor decision. You can say, okay, I don't want to do that because it doesn't make sense, because they're going wide from the left side on the return to the person that's already standing at the net. So the margin of error is tiny, and it's very unlikely that they're going to hit a good shot. I talk about that while we're playing.
Yeah. And if that's the case, you could even go the opposite way, which is, man, this particular shot keeps hurting me. I'm going to keep giving it to them until I can figure out how to counter it. Like if someone's forehand's crazy and they keep getting you on a particular ball, we used to do a thing where it's like, yeah, you keep serving. This was also in racquetball. You keep hitting the same serve until they can't hit it anymore. Literally, until they can't get it back. You just keep doing it. Or it's like in football, everybody in the stadium knows you're going to run right down the center. By the way, we're going to run right down the center. Let's see if you can stop it. I think that's somewhat relevant as to why not in a rec game? If it's at some point you're going to face something funky, like here's a great example of that. We had a group that we had 2 lefties and 2 righties, and we were very cognizant to keep the lefties on each side, on the opposite side of the court the whole time we were there. We just kept kind of switching out. And I said, well, let's do a game where both lefties are on, because that's one of the rarest things. It's one of the first tournaments I ever had. My first PPA tournament, the finals was 2 lefties.
Oh, wow.
Talk about having to completely recalibrate your brain and literally change every instinct you have to go the opposite way. And then for them, I mean, they were used to each other, but 2 lefties are not used to playing together. It is a thing that is a real anomaly in that world. And a lot of their superpowers had been neutralized because they were both lefty and they had to now cover areas that they wouldn't normally have to cover and things like that. It was really interesting to do, but worth experimenting again, when you're playing rec play.
Yeah, again, we come back to the important concept of picking something to work on and implementing that in some fashion in terms of strategy or visualization. The past couple shows, we've talked about predicting with paddle angles and core positioning. Go out in a game and hit a ball to someone's forehand or backhand when you're dinking and predict what shot they're going to make based on their paddle angle and core positioning. Work on that the entire time. That's one great way of implementing intentional rec play. Another way is figuring out a weakness or a safe spot. And what I mean by weakness, like someone makes errors or they pop up dinks or whatever on their backhand. So that's a weakness. Or a safe spot. They might be able to make that dink consistently on their backhand. They're never going to hurt you. That's a safe spot.
Right.
They're a strong spot, or they're things that can hurt you. Forehand volleys, backhand volleys, whatever it is, hit them that shot. There's a way you can do that. One of the most impactful ways that I implement the intentional rec play is I might work on a shot. Let's just say I want to work on a forehand speed up inside out on almost every fluffy ball I get. Let's say I do that. And then we get to 8-all, 9-all. At 8-all, 9-all, I will hit the best shot, and I'll talk to my partner and say, let's do this. Like, let's drop here. Let's get up to the kitchen. Let's go to this guy's backhand. Because when it gets tight, it's really, really good to really think about the best, most optimal strategy to get you and your partner the best balls. So you set up patterns that are most optimal for winning, because that gets you in the groove of making that third when you're at 8-all. So it gets you in the groove of a tight match or a tight game, and you want to make a ball to a particular spot, and you implement patterns that give you the best opportunity statistically to win those points at critical times. That is a skill that is super important. And whatever intentional rec play means to you, whatever skill you're working on, I highly recommend that when it gets tight, you go back to fundamentals and you go back to patterns that are winning. And you don't have to do it every game, but when the games get tight, that's what I would suggest you do. Because if you are playing tournaments and you want to get to the next level, that's when those matches are won. That's when those games are won, is during those 7-all, 8-7, whatever it is, those types of momentum changing points.
Yeah, I'll give you a few use cases that dovetail really well with that. Things that I do on a somewhat regular basis. And I'll probably do tomorrow because I'll be very rusty when I play. But the first thing I do when I'm feeling rusty is I start doing what I call Colin John's drops, which means there's no spin, there's no fluff at all. Like I'm not trying to hit this dipper that's going to go down at their ankles right into the non-volley zone. I'm hitting a very flat ball that is 12 inches to 24 inches above the net, just because I want that ball to go in. And if I'm not lacing these perfect backhand dirty drops and I'm hitting them into the net or too high or whatever, I will start eliminating spin just until I can get my motion back and go, okay, that's my groove again. The other thing I'll do somewhat often is I'll just have games where I just go, I'm only dropping this game. I'm not going to drive, or vice versa.
Yes.
I'm only going to drive this game just because I need some reps for those exact moments when you really need it, when something's not working because you've got some 6'6" dude who's poaching every ball and you're driving and he's not, you're like, well, we got to be better. We're going to have to drop this thing. And if you haven't worked on that in those kind of intense situations, then you won't have it in the bag. So I really like to start eliminating English, if you will. I start eliminating spin and all of the fluff that can come with all the things we do to hit like a dastardly third or fifth shot drop. And I just focus on thirds and fifths. Let me just get those in, because if we get them in and we're able to trust our defense, which I don't think enough people do. I think we warm up with a lot of defense as we're warming up, and then we don't trust it. We expect that we're going to hit this diabolical third and it's going to be perfect and we're never going to have to fight our way up to the non-volley zone. But that's not the case like 90% of the time. So just trust your defense, like if you guys are both pretty good at defense, then the third doesn't have to be that amazing. It can just be over the net. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned from you, is that at those higher levels, you just don't see as many thirds and fifths and sevenths missed. Like those shots are typically made, especially as you get into that the semis and every team's really good.
That's an excellent point, Michael. You'll see pros float thirds because they're so confident in their defense. And that's why I love to work on that mid-court defensive skill game, because once you are confident in that, you're less likely to try to make the perfect drop. And we've all been victim to that, where we're trying to make the perfect drop. And whether you hit a Colin John style fluffy drop, he makes consistent resets, drops. His defense is amazing. I played with him a bunch in Aspen this summer, and it was a lot of fun to play with him and talk with him about the game. That's one thing you can work on. You can just say, I'm going to make every single third, no matter how bad it is. And just recently when I've been training, I'm doing kind of like these 3-and-me's lately, and someone who had a terrible drop, and I'll defend or they'll defend one, and then we get another one back, and again, it's not a great fifth, and someone crushes the ball, and we somehow squeeze it out, and we get it back, and then someone misses the next ball. That's a winning pickleball point. You've made them hit 3 balls, and I always make the point, when you make a ball, it gives them the opportunity to screw up, and it gives us the opportunity to defend. So it gives us 2 options to win the point, or at least be in the point, whereas if we hit the drop in the net or hit it out or drop, drive, whatever, we don't have those 2 opportunities.
Well, it's like, what's the back of our camp shirt say?
Yeah, make him hit. Make him hit.
Make him hit, baby.
You don't like to be excessively verbose to make it point. You know how I am.
Yeah, right. Right, exactly.
One of the other things that I really like to work on, especially when I am playing with someone that I haven't played with before or haven't played with that much, I like to work on the communication. And I've really been getting into the drop drive communication. So if someone returns to me and you and I are playing, I'll say drop or drive. Ideally, right before you serve, I'll say, If you're serving and you're on the right, I'll say drop or drive to the person that's returning. So that way, and people have seemed to really take to that. They really seem to enjoy it because that way they know if the ball is coming back fast or hard. Because obviously if I drive, the ball is coming back faster. If I drop, then you have a little bit more time, even if I screw it up. That way so you prepare yourself. And then I also like to work on targeting a general spot. Like let's think in the middle. Let's think to the outside. You have a lefty-righty combo. They're not unstacking. Where do you go, Michael?
Oh, in the middle.
There you go. Exactly. I'll say middle. I might.
Yeah, me too.
I might get it.
I'll do the same
I
thing.
might even get a return. I'll say middle, and I might get a fifth. I might get the same middle. I think it is really a highly underrated component of pickleball, especially with people that they feel they're unfamiliar with. They just met them. They don't want to. And you don't have to be coaching them. You don't have to say, well, take your third, hit it cross court, and then take the next one to the middle, and then goes to the back. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is say, I'm going to drive or drop to the guy wearing the red shirt, or I'm going to attack the guy with the red shirt. His backhand isn't that great.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying, imagining a couple scenarios I've been in where the people that I'm playing with aren't that down. They're not that down for the mega communication. They're not, they just, clearly not listeners to the 4 Pro podcast, but it's an interesting thing. At some point you go, all right, well, I'm just thinking, okay, I guess I'm just going to do my own thing then, I suppose. We can win or lose, or it's like, hey, middle, and then they go to the outside or not paying any attention to it, or, it's hard to bring up sometimes when people just aren't on board. So we just go, all right, Jesus, take the wheel, I guess. Then we'll see what we can do in this game.
The only people you can control are yourself. And you can just control yourself in terms of your own communication, how you react to things, where you hit the ball. And if you're working on communication and the other person isn't receptive, that's all good. Just do your thing. As long as you're enjoying it, having fun, and trying to get something out of it, because, again, that's what we are talking about here, is trying to get better. So if you're trying to get better and your partner isn't receptive to it, it's probably not going to, come out great in terms of how the rec game goes, depending on the skill level of the opposing players and your partner's skill level. But you can still get something out of it. And sometimes it's something that your partner does that, like, let's say your partner is very negative and your partner speeds up every other ball, or they're just hitting it to the wrong spot. And you can just think of yourself like, I'm learning something because I don't want to be that person. I want to be a positive, constructive, communicative partner. I want to talk about where we're going to hit the ball. Like, that's how I want to be. So I don't want to be that way. So that is still learning something about yourself. And I just, like, every day that I go through, like, I try to analyze about what things I could have done better, things I come across that I like, don't like, and how I can make myself better as a person, better as a pickleball player. And if you do that, just get a little bit better each day.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I was just going to ask you as we wrap this up, sometimes you identify things in rec play that are a clear weakness of somebody on the other side. And I think that, like lobs, for instance, I play against a guy who's not a good lob retriever at all. He just doesn't have the right footwork for it. We've worked on it a little bit a couple of years ago. It's just not, it's not that he can't move. He hasn't worked on it enough that he can respond in a way. So we all know, the other 3 people on the court know that if you want to win a point, you can just lob it. But there is a point in which you go, that's not very sportsmanlike. I mean, it's not that it's not. You could totally do that. But in the spirit of the game, it's not the way I think any of us really want to win. Now, not to say that we don't do it in key moments and take advantage of it.
Well, if it's a tournament.
Not our fault. Not our fault that he hasn't worked on it. But if it's a tournament, totally different deal. But my point is, I remember being on court with my girlfriend who was maybe a 2.0 at the time. And there was a dude on the other side just poaching and ripping the ball at her. I mean, I got so PO'd at this dude because I'm like, first of all, read the room. She's a beginner, for crying out loud. But also, there's no need to exploit someone who's not good enough yet. Like, just know that when you do it, go, okay, I've done that. I can do it. I'm capable of doing this. I'm not going to keep going back to the well and embarrass this person or hurt them or do something on a court to make them uncomfortable.
Exactly. Read the room. But along those lines, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the last thing that I was going to mention, is that when there is an opposing player that is clearly better than their partner in a rec game, we all have this innate competitive aspect of our personalities that we want to win. I'm as competitive as they can be. At the same time, you have to recognize that in a rec game, if you want to compete and get better, ideally you should at least hit the better player some balls, at least, to keep them engaged in the game. And if you're going to work on things, if you know that their partner is going to miss every other ball and you hit every single ball to their partner, it's, number one, not as fun. Number two, you don't get to work on ideally what you need to work on. And number three, you can't practice your skills nearly as well when the ball isn't coming back. So, keep all those things in mind and at least hit the better player some balls, so that way you're able to maintain the point, at least have some interesting points.
Yeah, and don't be a jerk.
Yeah, that too.
That's what it comes down to. Just don't be a jerk. All right, folks, get out there and play some rec play and get better at pickleball. And don't be a jerk. That's the summary of this entire show. Get better at pickleball and don't be a jerk.
Exactly. And listen, we want to, again, thank everyone that has reached out and asked us where we've been, because that's really humbling, and that tells us that people are listening, and we really are just so grateful to anyone that listens to the podcast. We're so grateful for anyone that goes out there and writes a review on Apple, on the iPad, on the Apple podcast app, and any app.
On the Apple.
On the Apple. Is that
what I said?
I'm 107.
On the Apple.
Hey, I'm 57, but I'm on the way to 100.
On there on the Google and then on the Apple. Thanks for the reviews, old man Morariu. I'll take it from here.
You take
Thanks.
it.
Always, by the way, a little slice of heaven with you, Mircea. Folks, it's so great to be back in your earballs. Thank you for having us. Go out in the pickleball courts, enjoy yourselves, and have yourselves a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to 4.0 to Pro. For more tips, find us on Instagram at 4.0 to Pro. If you have a pickleball question, submit it at picklehelp.com. Now, get out there and dominate. But don't forget to have fun.